Hello everybody, welcome back. Recently I qualified myself for the Magic Online Champion Showcase, which is basically the biggest event that one can hope to qualify for without being in the MPL or Rivals. It's a $70,000 tournament with only 8 contestants, which is insane EV, probably the highest EV of all tournaments, because it's so hard to qualify for. Yet at the same time it felt very easy for me, just because I got very lucky and it wasn't that many rounds. It was 10 rounds eventually that took to qualify. You needed to 5-0 a showcase, qualifier, and then there was a 32 person actual qualifier in which you needed a top 8 and then trophy a draft, which doesn't sound like all that much compared to how prestigious it's supposed to be and how much high the prize pool is. But anyways, I got very lucky in a lot of rounds in a row and ended up qualifying, and just in time, because this was the last limited one that there was likely ever going to be, because for some reason Wizards doesn't like making limited tournaments despite having the best feedback and excitement around them. But anyways, I think thought this would be a good time to do a review of my draft, as in points review of my draft. Like, how do I put this? Yeah. What I was planning to do is like an over-explain draft where I talk about my picks in real time while I'm making them and what my thoughts are. But since I obviously wanted to focus on the draft, I didn't record. But now I'm going to go over it posthumously because I figure people will be interested. And I'm also going to talk about Sealed, because while you may not be able to qualify for the MOCS anymore, you can still qualify for the Pro Tour with many PTQs on Magic Online, and you can still play the Sealed Arena Open and win up to 2K. So let's get some Sealed advice in there too. We're going to start with the draft, then we're going to go over how I built my Sealed pool and other possible decks, and then we're going to go over more general Sealed tips. And I believe that is it, so let's get right into it. Alright, Pack 1, Pick 1 is a very easy one. There is a Lena Night Scribe. Sorry about the blurriness, by the way, I don't know why, I can't really fix this. And not much else. Ignis Inspiration is also a very good card. It's Electrolyze level, power level, which if you don't know, Electrolyze is a very good card, because it deals 3 damage and draws a card. But Light Scribe is basically wins the game if you untap with it. Obviously, you could have no instant sorceries to trigger it, but realistically, because of Lore and Lessons, that doesn't happen very often. And it's giving your creatures, at least on the relevant turns, +1/+1 to +2/+2 every single turn. You just can't pass this card. It's too powerful. We do have to note that we did pass an Ignis Inspiration, which means, at the very least, the person we pass to will be splashing red, and might be heavier red, which means that there's a disadvantage to going into red in Pack 1, because we won't get past a red bomb in Pack 2, because the person who took this will almost certainly splash it. That's how powerful it is. Other notables aren't really there. Okay, next pack is very weak, unfortunately. Somebody took a... I don't know what they took. Somebody took a common. And we got a Shock, a Culling Ritual, and really not much else. I think it's between the Shock and the Pest Summoning here. Pest Summoning being one of the better summonings. There not being much in this pack. I have to go for the Shock. I think Shock's a really good card in this format because there's a lot of X2s. But it's also replaceable because there's decent other cheap removal, and usually my decks don't feel lacking in removal, at least not in draft. But having it now as extra upside, having it with a cheap spell with a Magecraft card as extra upside, so we end up taking it here. Not much to consider in terms of what I'm passing, just generic cards. Next up, we get a somewhat interesting pack. Really, again, pretty weak. There's an Elemental Masterpiece, which could be good. I think people overrate this card. It's a good card, but you don't necessarily need this to be your 1 of 3 or so instant sorceries that you want in your decks that are trying to cast expensive spells. And it's really not that much better than Leyline Invocation. The fact that it makes multiple bodies is nice, so it's not as weak to removal, but it makes it also worse at the same time, because if they double block and have a damage removal spell or something, it's a little awkward. Or if you double block, rather. Not much else to consider here. I do like Necrotic Fumes, but not this early. And I like Explosive Welcome, but there's not the deck for it. It doesn't work in white, really. Only with red and blue. And Light Scribe pretty much commits us to at least splashing white. So what I end up taking here, and this is a bit of a strange one, is Witherbloom Pledge Page. And the reason is mostly just it goes in more colors. It's about as powerful, maybe a little worse in terms of power level, raw power level, as the rest of the cards in this pack. Fumes is kind of comparable. Explosive Welcome is very powerful. Curve can be powerful, but it just goes in more colors. It's just if you can play it in black or green, and I like to stay it open. In case you haven't watched my earlier draft video already, I like to stay open quite a bit. Alright, next pack. Decent pack. Has to take Epidemic Dispute. This card's very, very strong. I think it's between this and Umbral Juke as the top 2 contenders. I think Umbral Juke is also underrated. I've heard from people that they don't like it, but the flexibility is very nice, and both modes of the card, while not great for the rate, the flexibility makes it very nice, right? Because an Edict effect has a very high upside. I don't know if you've ever played with Edicts Unlimited, but making a player sacrifice a creature can be very, very good for cheap, because it's just a hard removal spell if they only have 1 creature. And having the flexibility to not have to do that, to make a 2/1 instead, is also very, very nice. However, Academic Dispute is a conditional removal spell that draws a card, I'd say. It's not a hard removal spell because you need a creature in play. But especially with Expanded Anatomy being in the set, it's just so easy to play this plus Expanded Anatomy. It even learns for the anatomy by itself. And then you just eat a creature. You might not be the best creature of theirs, but it eats a creature, which is very powerful for 1 mana, and draws a card. Again, Team Spell being very good with Light Scribe, so not relevant. Oh, any relevance on the things we're passing? Passing another Shock. Red's not going to be opened later on, but with the cards we're getting, we might splash this, and also with the cards we're getting, we just have to play it. Okay, get past a... Now this is a tough pick. We have Quintorius versus Field of Exodus, or Rise of Exodus. Quintorius is a very, very powerful red-white card. It's the only card I will basically ever play like a red-white synergy for. Normally when I play red-white, I just play it as an aggro deck, and basically ignore every card that says that has graveyard synergy, because I think they're all very bad, at least relative to what you can be doing, and they're too hard to enable. The Quintorius wins the game on its own with a couple enablers, so he's worth it. However, for the same reason I took Pledge Mage, I'm going to take Rise of Exodus. Definitely less powerful in a vacuum, but goes in many more decks. It goes in any white deck, white, red, or white, black, so that's already one extra deck can go into. And if by some reason we're not white, if we're like black, green, then we can play it as well. And that flexibility is just so worthwhile and definitely worth the slight decrease in power level. If it is, it's arguable that it's even a slight decrease in power level. Alright, next pack we have, anything passive relevance. We're passing a Mage Hunter and an Allen Shield Mage, which might be a reason to think that white and black will be less open. In terms of reading signals, we haven't gotten past a lot of blue or green cards. It's kind of hard to expect that blue or green will be open, basically 0 if we look back. And then we have Laureled Campus versus Scepter of the Fens. I end up opting for Laureled Campus. And by the way, just for reference, I don't like Arrogant Poet. I don't think it's good 2-drop. I'll play it if I really need 2-drops, but I don't like it. And I don't like Village Rites and black-white decks really either. It's only really black-green that I like it in. If you have lots of Magecraft, the fact that it's a 1-mana instant or sorcery can be nice, but not that nice. I do like Scepter of the Fens, and especially in a... It's probably going to be a lower-powered draft, just because it's better players doing the draft. However, I opt to take Laureled Campus, the reason being that even if I'm not exactly red-white, I might want to splash the Dispute. And that's basically it. Yeah, that's basically it. So we take that and move on. Interesting pick here. I actually opt to take the Spiteful Squad over the Expel, despite being of similar power level and having this be a multicolored card. And the reason is that I can't honestly remember the reason. And it's pretty close. It's a pretty close pick. I ended up going for the Squad because I felt like white-black was open with how late it was. I think it's a slightly more powerful card. I think it works better with our slower cards. I don't like this card in aggro decks because they can ignore it and try to win late game and just take 2 damage a turn. But in slower decks in slower decks or decks with lots of flyers, it gets much better. And with these two, we can very easily be a slower deck from here. It also has nice dispute synergy if we happen to play both of them in the same deck. But yeah, I ended up taking the Spiteful Squad. I think it's very close between the two, but Expel is kind of an awkward removal spell. We have some removal already, and I felt like white-black was open. Honestly, it's a pick I made. It might be wrong. I'm not super confident on this one. Okay, we get a very late study break, which I will take very happily. I don't mind Mind Rot in this format. Haha, mind. Anyways, I don't mind it in this format, but Study Break is a very good card. It may not look like it, but the way it plays out is just very nice. You can chip a lot of damage through at the same time by getting Expanded Anatomy with it, and giving +2/+2 to a creature. In addition to tapping the 2 creatures that can't block, you can slow the game down and take a removal spell or a blocker creature with it if you want. Triggers Magecraft, just an all-around super solid card. Not much else to talk about. Like, I could see taking the Eagle Blunt there, because I kind of want to be a slower deck here, but I still described to want to go aggro, so I didn't take the City Break. We'll enter the Prophecy. I'm very, very happy about this, given that I've taken 2 learn cards and no lessons so far. I think in the draft, I was actually saying to myself that I'm concerned that I'm not getting any lessons, that people are smart and are going to be taking lessons as high or even higher than they should be, and I'm not going to get any. I say before I get a very, very late Enter the Prophecy that I will very happily take. We do We're a Whirlwind Denial, which makes me somewhat concerned that blue is open, but what are you going to do? We will Calling Ritual as well. This is not okay. I've seen, in fact, after the draft, I saw lots of people being very surprised at this, so I guess I'll give you a spoiler from my deck. If you haven't seen the deck already, I saw a lot of people being very surprised that this was in my deck because they didn't think it's a good card. It is. It kills tokens, and every deck plays a bunch of tokens, okay? That's it. And having access to a board wipe, but not having the choice to play it is oftentimes worth the possible card disadvantage of not wanting to play a board wipe. And the fact that it's only a semi-board wipe is kind of an advantage in its case, because you get to trade off your tokens for their non-tokens. If they'll allow you, if they're attacking you, you get to choose what you trade for, and then use them to kill their whole board and maybe keep some of your own stuff, which is very, very powerful. In addition, it's splashable because you can just splash it off if you get Environmental Sciences, because Environmental Sciences is super strong. Anyways, we're not passing much, so we definitely take it here. I'm just speaking on the fact that this is a good card and is underrated, for sure. Pretty mediocre pack. Take a Defend the Campus. I could take Archivist. I've got up on this card a little bit because it triggers Quintorius. It does technically trigger the other red-white cards, which you might play to just curve pieces. But I like the first copy of Defend the Campus for the sideboard a little bit better. Occasionally you'll main deck it. I find the +1/+1 mode to be surprisingly good. Normally cards like this in the past haven't been great, just because they're so inflexible. And by cards like this, I mean cards that destroy big creatures. But the +1/+1 to everything mode has been better than I expected. I expected it to just not come up very often, but it's come up a decent amount. Usually you're never happy about it, but sometimes you'll just kill a 2 or 3 drop by giving +1/+1, plus a couple of bunch of chip damage, and oftentimes you'll just kill a big creature with it. Other consideration is Claim the Firstborn. I do like having one in my sideboard, and occasionally in my main deck if I'm very aggressive, because again, it steals tokens, which means that it can steal big fractals, it can steal big elementals, basically always. But because I don't think I'm going to be red here, and because the first Defend the Campus has some value, I'm going to take that. And then we wheel the Island Shield Mage, and that's where I'm like, okay, Black Slate is open, let's move in. I also wheel the Laurel Campus, which might be a signal that red's open. Either way, we were pretty confident that white's open, so we know to stick to white. Not hedge into red, not hedge into like red anything else, or hedge into like black green with Culling Ritual. Now we know white's open, and we're going to try and figure out what to do from there. Because we could still play red, we could still play black, we could still hypothetically move into like an Abzan type of deck, but we don't really want to. Basically, useless pack. I'll take Show of Confidence. I think that card's a little underrated, but not a lot. My friend Kazu likes it a lot, but I think you need to be in a very specific deck for it to be good, and that deck is lots of Guiding Voices and keyword and lots of cheap creatures. Because if you don't draw exactly both of those, it's not a good card. And if you do, it's powerful but not insane. It's good with cheap spellcraft creatures like the Light Scribe, obviously. But even Eager First Year is decent, and it's an instant, which means you can use it as a nice combat trick occasionally with permanent counters. So if you're doing it for 2, it's usually worth it. For 2, I mean by 2 counters. But it's kind of hard to set up it doing it for 2 at a point where it still matters in the game, is my issue with it. We'll take it. Got another Defend the Campus. Now I'm somewhat sad. I don't remember what I am taking here. I think both pictures are justifiable. I'd probably take the Relic Sloth on the hedge into red, but we'll see what I take. If I do, make your mark. It's playable. It doesn't look like it, but it's playable if you're short on like instant sorceries and you want to trigger Magecraft, or just have lots of cheap creatures and want to convert that into tempo. So not bad. Okay, open a very bad pack and get somewhat salty, and then I see the involvement. I remember this exactly. I'm like, I read the signals well. We're gonna open a good card, and then we just opened no black or white cards. Then I saw Environmental Sciences, and then I picked it. Again, for those of you who watched my previous video, that card is great. Great. Okay, I think I use this comparison. I think it's a good one. In almost every deck I've drafted, the first copy of Environmental Sciences will have more of an impact on the deck than any common. I could pick and put in my deck. And I stand by that, happily. Even if you're not splashing, it just gives you the option to get a land for 2 mana. Which Eater Prophecy kind of does too, but without consistency, for 1 extra mana, and does not gain you 2 life. All of which are very, very relevant. So that's why I like Environmental Sciences a lot, and I'm very happy to take it here. Although sad, I'm not going to will anything because there's no cards I want. But that's just life. We take the Sciences. Not much to note that we're passing. Just giving you guys my thoughts. Yeah. Okay, and then we get past the Sparring Metrin. Yay! Make up for the fact that we didn't open a rare. A very easy pick. This card is great. It learns, and it's just so hard to beat if you have any creature on board as you play it, or even after you play it. If you don't have a creature, you can get one with it because there's summonings, and it just plays out very, very nicely. Not much else to consider. Flash and Malice and Silver Campus are nice, but this card's great. I'll tell you a funny story. It turns out that the person passing to us was in white, despite us passing them nearly no white cards in pack 1, which surprised me. I had to clear, and they took a Sword Splashers over the Regimen. Actually, I don't know that they're white. Actually, they took the Sword Splashers over the Regimen. Maybe they just had Environmental Sciences of their own, so they pack 1, pick 1, didn't really want to splash. But anyways, we got this. We're very happy. Move on to the nete pack. Note that we're passing an Arch and a Mentor's Guidance. Even if the people passing us weren't in blue or green in pack 1, it will be in pack 2 from the cards we're passing them so far. Now a Cultivator. I think we take Pilgrim of the Ages here. I think this card's, again, somewhat underrated. It's a 3-mana 2-1 that draws a card, basically. I've talked about this already, but getting the Plains is about equivalent to drawing a card, I think, because if you build your deck with less lands, and because in the early game, getting the Plains is almost always better than... If only Philly, it's almost always better than drawing a card, which is why I think it's better. And then in late game, drawing a land might be worse, but I think it's made up for by the early game, guaranteed hitting with land drops. And then the ability to get back in the late game is nice. I've definitely had games come up where I have flyers. My opponent has fatties, and I just want to get a blocker back and make the blocks until they die. So yeah, easy Pilgrim. Very sad about how many blue-green cards I've passed that are very good, but I stick to my reading that white was open pack 1. I now have a Sparring Regiment in addition to my Light Scribe, and I'm just going to stick to it until my pack 3 is good, even if my pack 2 isn't. And rewarded, we get a Flunk. Amazing removal spell. Amazing pack in general. There's an Island Shield Mage, a Silver Quill Pledge Mage, a Guiding Voice, and an Umbral Juke, all of which I think are premium commons and uncommons in black-white. But Flunk is just an amazing removal spell. It's 2 mana, it almost always hits something, and usually it'll hit what you want. You can use it as a combat trick, because unlike Lash of Malice, it gives -X, -X, instead of +X, -X. Just an all-around great card, not much else to talk about there. We really hope we wheel something. If we don't, I start getting concerned that black-white is not open, but at that point it'll be too late. So, let's Flunk. We pass to Fumes. I do end up taking the Fumes here because I do value the first copy of most lessons quite a bit. Fumes included. I do think it's one of the worst ones, but it's nice to be able to get a removal spell. And even if you do already have an Intruder Annihilation, it's still nice to have this one because sometimes you only want to pay 3 mana for your removal spell. And sometimes you have a lot of tokens and cheap creatures that you're happy to part with in the mid to late game. If one has a fatty or a flyer you need to get through. In retrospect, as the draft goes, we will see. I will be very, very, very sad that I did not take the eager first year here. Because what ends up happening is that I end up being very, very short on 2-drops, and my deck needs them pretty badly because it has a bunch of cards that require creatures in the early game. And normally I pick up 2-drops very late, at the very least mediocre ones like Arrogant Poet. But what happened is that there was at least one other black-white player at the table. I know because I played them in round 2, and they were passing to me this pack. So after this, I stopped getting good black-white cards, and at the very least black-white 2-drops. And when I played against them, their deck was just a pile of mediocre cards because obviously they went into black-white while I was passing to them. But it did kind of screw us in the sense that we did not get a lot of 2-drops, which again was my fault. I think, in retrospect, the eager first year would have been better than the Necrotic Fumes, just for the safety of making sure I have good 2-drops. Because white, so often with Guiding Voice, you just need to have good early drops, and the eager first year is one of the better ones. And the upside of Necrotic Fumes, at least in this deck so far, is just so low. We have very few creatures, period. Very, very few small creatures that I'm happy to exile. And this deck doesn't feel like it needs removal quite yet. With a Flunk, Defend the Campus, Rise of Exodus, and Study Break already, it's just not as good as what we need. So, mispick here, I'll fully admit. We're going to move on. Passing another Quander's Cultivator, so I'm very sad about that. Not a good pack, unfortunately, here. So what I end up taking over the Pillar Rescuer, because I don't like that card, or the Make the Mark, is the Start from Scratch. I could also consider taking one of these blue-green cards and hedging, maybe. But, no, it's just not worth it. So we take the Start from Scratch because I might splash Academic Dispute off of my Environmental Sciences because it's a very good card. And if I do, I'll have a red source, and therefore this will be a nice lesson to have. So, simple as that. Take it. Not much to think about. I'll take the Spiteful Squad pretty happily. Again, as it turns out, I will wish I had taken a 2-drop or a 1-drop here, but Spiteful Squad is a powerful card. We don't have a ton of flyers yet, but we do look to be a more mid-rangey deck. Now with Pilgrim of the Ages and Sparring Regimen wanting to go later in the game. As well as that Wheeled Island Shield Mage being great as a combo, just because it's hard to kill the Island Shield Mage, or harder, and if you put extra counters on it, it speeds up the clock and makes it even more difficult for your opponents to make a decision. I did a shitty pack again, be a bit sad. I honestly don't remember what I'm taking here. My guess is I took a Witherbloom Campus, just because I have Environmental Sciences, and if I do end up splashing green instead of red, I'll be glad to have the Campus, which I think is correct. There are definitely some green cards. In fact, I already have Cohen Ritual, so that's definitely the Campus, because I might splash that if I don't get 2 or 1 drops. And there's also not much else. The Stadium isn't a good card. I don't like Pillar Rescuer. I'll play it if I both have a lot of 2 and 3 drops, and keyword and don't have a lot of 4 or 5 drops, but I already have 4 or 5 drops and very few 2 or 3 drops, so definitely a no for me on that one. Do the Campus, get past a late Expel, be happy about it. Don't love Expel in aggro decks, but it's very easy to make it work in this format. You'll pretty much always play every copy of Expel you get, even if you're an aggro deck, which hasn't been true in previous formats, but it is in this one. It's easy to make it work. The scenarios will almost always present themselves. There's Study Break. There's the Study Break combo, obviously, that you tap creatures and then get to exile them, which is definitely relevant. It comes up. There's lots of flyers, so if you want to, you can make them take the fight to the ground and then use it well. And the black-white and usually red decks can almost always win late games just because they have good bombs and learn. So even if they stabilize against your early tempo, having Expel can still be nice. There are certainly some decks like super aggro decks that don't want it, but it's almost always good, and in this deck it certainly will be. Wheel the Campus, very happy about that. Happily take it. It's back. Wheel the Spiteful Squad, again, very happily take it. We're now reached the point where I think we have too many Spiteful Squads, or are getting close to it, without enough flyers or late game potential, or even early 2-drops to make sure we have creatures to put counters on if we play this card in turn 4. But if we draft with our deck in mind in pack 3, hopefully we'll be okay. Wheel the Shield Mage, again, very, very happy. Feels good to know that we read the signals at least somewhat accurately, and that we're wheeling good black-white cards. But right now the deck's looking a little mediocre. We're missing curve pieces, and we're missing very, very, very key, as I talk about in my video, Expanded Anatomy. Both that and Environmental Sciences are the 2 cards I think are more impactful than any common as your first copy in any deck. But if we get that, I will be very happy with the 3 Spiteful Squads as a combo, with the Light Scry, with all of our learn cards, that and some curve pieces, and we'll be good to go, basically. We'll go another Show of Confidence. I don't remember what I take here. I think at this point I take the Beaming Defiance, because like I said, to make a Show of Confidence good, you need lots and lots of cheap creatures and cheap instant sorceries, of which I have essentially neither so far. And it's possible I end up playing Beaming Defiance, because sometimes if you just play an Alvin Shield Mage and leave a Beaming Defiance, that'll get you through at some point or another, and you just gotta hope. We do take the Beaming Defiance, Crashing Appointment, who cares? Take a Familiar, which I'll give you guys a sneak peek. We might end up playing, despite the card being unplayable. We may just play a 1 mana 1 with no text on it because we don't get any 2-drops. It's a possibility. And I remember this one was very self-deducing. We open an unplayable pack. Just actual 0 cards we want. I don't think Brackish Trudge is a good card, even if you have life gain. The 4-2 stat line is horrible in the format, and the fact that it enters tapped is a significant downside. Neither of which are worth the upside of returning it from the graveyard to your hand. Not period, but pretty much period. And then there's just nothing else I would ever want. So I stare at this pack for, I think I stare at this pack for pretty much the whole 1 minute and 30 seconds. I take longer on this pack than basically any other pick, despite it being the easiest one, until I hate draft a Cody, because it is a pod draft. I will be playing against these players, and I do not want to face Cody in my deck without cheap removal. Flunk excluded because it doesn't really kill Cody, at least not early, when it's just going to farm me. So I just hate draft it. There's really nothing in this pack. Alright, and then we get past a nice pack. I actually don't like Vanishing Verse, and I really need 1 and 2 drops, so I take the Eye Twitch. Good card. If we get a Anatomy, we'll be very happy with it. If we don't, it won't be great, but it'll be fine. It's a cheap creature, which makes it nice with the Spiteful Squad, or make the Spiteful Squads better more accurately. Good with Spartan Regiment is a cheap creature, especially with flying. Good card in general. We have removal, so we don't need Vanishing Verse, and also, key, Vanishing Verse sucks. It looks good, but there's just, every token is multicolored, most cards are multicolored. It basically never has a choice, and almost always just kills something mediocre or is dead. I've played with it twice, or in 2 decks more accurately, and it has not been good either time. And then, we read the signals right! Woo! Everybody cheers! We get past a Mavenda, and notably a Professor of Symbology, so we get to know that we definitely are in the right archetype. You can see the timer's barely gone, and I've already moved the Mavenda to my deck almost. I'm just about to deselect it. So we take the Mavenda, obviously. Not great in this deck quite yet. We have just, all we have so far is Study Break. You can target one of your creatures and one of their creatures to make it cheaper. Beaming Defiance and Show of Confidence, but it's pretty easy to pick up stuff. If not, spells you put in your deck. Expanded Anatomy, a single Expanded Anatomy makes the card very well worth it, and it's also just a 3/2/3 flyer. So, even though I would love Professor of Symbology as both a 2-drop and a great card, we have to take the Mavenda here. Too strong. And there he is. We get past Expanded Anatomy. This will show you how high I love Expanded Anatomy as well. I take it over 2 pretty premium black-white cards that I also love, and Eliminate, in fact. Eliminate and Pilgrim of Ages, and Pilgrim of the Ages, and Silver Gold Wedge Mage, which just shows you how good this card is. It's just so insane. Even ignoring the counter synergy with Spiteful Squad, the idea of having a lesson not only give you immediate tempo, but make your attack good for the turn while giving vigilance is just so amazing. It's so hard to explain. I go over this in my previous video, but like, you have a 4/3, they have a 4/3. Suddenly you're attacking for 6, they can't block, and they can't attack back into you. It just wins races on its own. As a card, you can draw every game if you want it, but you don't have to if you don't want to. So you don't have enough creatures. If you're weak to removal, whatever, you don't have to get it. But if you do, it's so strong in situations that it's strong in. Alright, slamming that, moving on. Slamming Guiding Voice, moving on. Mostly because I'm a Venda, I guess I could consider taking Alvin Shield Mage if I didn't have it, but now that I picked up the Anatomy, my lesson board is great. I want more cards that learn, even though I already have, like, 5? Yeah, 5 or 6 or 4, but I still want more cards that learn. Cards great with Mavenda, and we just want it in general. Also, too many Shield Mages can get awkward, even though I do like the combo with Spiteful Squad. Other Guiding Voice. I'd love to see it. I took a lot of time on this pick, and I'm not at all confident I was correct between the Expanded Anatomy and the Guiding Voice. So let me count to make sure. But right now I have Eye Twitch, Guiding Voice, Study Break, Rise of Exodus? I only have 4. I only have 4 learn cards, which is why I ended up taking the Guiding Voice. But having 2 Expanded Anatomies in aggressive decks actually does end up being very valuable. You oftentimes want to get multiple of the card if you have multiple learn cards, because it's just so good. But I think I agree with current Max's pick to take Guiding Voice, given that I have only 4 lessons and only 4 learn cards and already a decent amount of lessons, good lessons. The Fumes, the Prophecy, and the Sciences and the Anatomy are all, at the very least, decent ones. And Guiding Voice is a very nice card and increases Mavenda efficacy, consistency, whatever you want to say. Take that, get past the Pledge Mage, take a Pledge Mage easily, not close, take a Pledge Mage. Card's great, especially now that we have 2 Guiding Voices. The combo of Pledge Mage, another excellent combo with Expanded Anatomy is pretty much any 3-drop into Guiding Voice plus Expanded Anatomy, but especially Pledge Mage or Leech Fanatic. You just make a 5/5 lifelink Vigilance, and then the race is over. And that's it. Or in Pledge Mage's case, I have 6/4 Flying Vigilance with lifelink, and then the game is just over. The race at the very least, and usually the game, they basically have to win the late game at that point. And again, like, let me just express how much power that is. Have any game you want, you can't get aggroed out. They have to try and win the late game. Sure, you might be down a card if they have a removal spell because you just spent your card pumping your creature, but the fact that they can't win a race is just it's so hard to explain. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I hope you understand how good it is. Wheel of the Lash Malice, be very happy about it. Cheap removal spell. Triggers are now a couple more copies of Magecraft. I guess just the Light Scribe and the Pledge Mage still, but yeah, removal spell triggers Magecraft. Great. Nothing else. I do like the combo of Village Rites with Spiteful Squad, notably, and I will put Village Rites on my deck if I have like 3 to 4 copies of Spiteful Squad or Star People, but not worth taking over Lash Malice. We'll defend the campus, put it in the sideboard. He's picked. We'll Study Break. Be very, very happy about this. Take it. Now I kind of wish I took the second Expanded Anatomy. I maintain that it was correct to take the Study Break or take the Guiding Voice over it when I did, but I kind of wish I didn't now. Nothing. And we'll Flesh Mage. Super happy about that. Yeah, we're just feeling really good about reading signals here. Feeling very happy with our deck, or at least decently happy. Very much wish I took another 2-drop over the Necrotic Fumes, but what can you do? And very happy with our deck. You can see I've already moved the Snowbinder's Familiar to the main deck. I'm just gonna have to play a little mana 1/1, unfortunately. Okay, unplayables. Wield a Reduced Memory. Yeah, White was very open. Reduced Memory is another underrated lesson. A lot of the times, especially with Pilgrim of the Ages, you don't give a shit about giving your opponent a 3/2, and having 3 mana removal is very, very nice. It's for the same reason Assumes is in that you can push through your big creatures or your flyers if you need to for only 3 mana. So on and so forth, and then the combo of not really caring about the 3/2s because of Pilgrim of the Ages is also a very relevant one. We'll take that happily, and we'll move on. And that is the deck. I will now show you the final build, which I realized I should have pulled up ahead of time, but did not. I end up playing the 1/1 just because I need it, and I end up playing Splashing Culling Ritual because I misdrafted, and I have so few 2 and 1 mana cards that I have to draft the Culling Ritual. I have to play the Culling Ritual. Let's find it on my Twitter. Speaking of which, go follow my Twitter. There it is. Yeah, so this is the final build. We play the Culling Ritual and the Snowbinder's Familiar. We only play 16 lands, which was a bit greedy, but with the Intro to Environmental Sciences and Pilgrim of the Ages, I felt like it was justified. Also, this deck cannot really afford to flood. It peters out pretty fast. We had a second Rise of Exodus. I probably would have played another land, but we didn't. 2 campuses. It might have been wrong to play 16, honestly, but that's what I did. So it goes. Cards we didn't play are we cut 1 Study Break, which I think was the only card I really was unhappy about cutting. I kind of like this event, and I kind of like the Beaming Defiance, but Study Break was the one I really didn't like to cut because it's decent with my Venda. It's a good card in general, but it needs creatures in play to be good. You don't really want to be using it to tap your opponent's creatures to gain life and not die. And also, we didn't have any creature lessons to get off of it. That's very important. You want at least 1 creature lesson just because sometimes you want a creature off of your Learn card, and we did not get that. Which, while another reason that Culling Ritual is good in this deck, is not a reason that Study Break is good. So basically, if you're behind on board, Study Break doesn't do shit in this deck because you have no creature to stabilize, and all it does is gain you a couple points of life, which is why I ended up cutting it. Which, again, might be incorrect. Who knows? That's what I did. So there we go. We won the trophy with this deck. We got very lucky. We drew our only Trigger Up, which also happened to be a broken card a lot. Fully admit to it. I am a huge luck sack. I'm sorry to my opponents that I just curved out 1 into 2 every game despite having no consistency. I think one match I went Eye-Twitch, Light Scribe into Guiding Voice plus Study Break, and they were at like 7 or 8 life on turn 3. It was not reasonable whatsoever. Yeah, that was that. So now we are going to go into the sealed, and then we'll go over some more general sealed lessons. But before that, I need to drink water because I am thirsty. Okay, drank some water. Let's get into the sealed. I need some more water. Wow. Whew, that was a lot of talking. I just did it once. How long? 30 minutes. Wow, it's gonna be a long video. Wasn't expecting it to be that long. All right, here's the pool. We'll start off with the pool. I'll go over the cards real quickly. First thing you should do when you build your pool, move all your lessons aside. It's very important what lessons you have as to how your deck is built. That's the first thing you should do. I already did it for you. But yeah, look at your lessons. We got 2 Necrotic Fumes, 1 Confront the Past, 1 Illuminate History, Commitment Breach, Spirit Summoning, Elemental Summoning, Fractal Summoning, and Expanded Anatomy. Not great lessons. It's okay. We do have some okay creature ones and Expanded Anatomy, but in my expanded anatomy, is a lot less good in sealed. Still very good, mind you, but less good just because you need creatures in play for it, and you oftentimes are a much slower deck trying to win a late game, in which case you don't want to play cheap creatures, and therefore it's less often good, so to speak. Also, much more importantly, no environmental sciences. I am somewhat confident that I would trade an entire pack of magic cards in my sealed deck for one environmental sciences. Might be an exaggeration, but something along those lines. I would trade a lot for a guaranteed environmental sciences in my sealed deck. It's one of, if not the best common, it's definitely the best common in the set for sealed to have opened, and it might be the best uncommon, and it's probably better than the average rare, in all honesty. Doesn't really matter because you don't have much choice over what you open in sealed, but in sealed in particular, when you want to splash and your mana is going to be shit because you don't get to draft around it, it's great. Absolutely disgusting. And then the Scry 2 draw and the Interdannihilation are also very nice lessons to have, compared to Necrotic Fins and the other shitty ones. At least in sealed. But anyways, yeah, so multicolored cards, not very strong. I think our rares will note, I do like to look at my rares first. Other people don't like to do this, but I always start by rare at the start, and then I could do it here, but it'll mess it up. Actually, no, but it'll mess these up is the issue. Anyways, yeah, you always sort by rarity at the start, or at least I do. I look so with Professor Onyx, Dragon's Guard Elite. I should have pulled these up ahead of time, but I didn't, alas. You'll have to bear with me as I look for them. Retriever Phoenix, Poet's Quill, Hunted by the Reek, and Sparran Regiment. I believe that's it. Hopefully I didn't miss any. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One of these is foil. I missed one. Oh, it was the Confront the Past. Okay, I think. I don't know. I thought Confront the Past didn't replace one, though. Okay, whatever. This is essentially the rares that we opened. We're very close to it. Obviously, I want to play black for Professor Onyx and Poet's Quill, being pretty much considered bomb rares. This card's great. I will splash it, almost certainly, even without that. Retriever Phoenix and Sparran Regiment are great, so we're certainly going to be doing some splashing here. We're almost certain of that. Looking at our cards, my immediate suggestion is, or immediate thought is green-black. We're 100% back black, basically. We can look at an aggro deck, but between Professor Onyx, Poet's Quill, two of the best common, basically, besides environmental sciences, but the best common you put in your actual deck, being Rise of Exodus, both because it goes in a lot of decks and because it exiles and draws a card, and sealed being great. More removal, hunt for specimens, just a lot of great black cards. We'll be pretty confident that we're going to play black here. Inquisition, which I'm unsure whether it's actually good in sealed, but I ended up not playing it. And then that's about it. And then green sticks out immediately just because I have an emergent sequence and a Snakeskin Veil, which are things people that are good sealed. Everyone needs to play removal because there's so many bombs, and shutting off the removal is great, as well as putting the counter on the thing. Usually you can use it as a combat trick, which can be nice. Emergency was obviously great. 2-mana 2/2 that ramps. Elite obviously great. Beyond that, not a ton. Oh, Mage Duel, sorry, also great. Essentially a 1-mana removal. If not 1 mana, it's very easy to make it 1 mana removal. Honor Troll's okay. We have Cultivate, which is great for splashing. So yeah, I mean, immediately I just want to be in red. If you immediately look at the blue cards, you might think that they're good, which they are certainly in power level, but the issue is that Pop Quiz isn't great in this deck because we already have a lot of learn cards in black, which we kind of have to be, and because our lesson board isn't great. Without any of the good colorless lessons, aside from this, and with only like 3 creature lessons. And if we're playing a blue-black deck or something along those lines, the teams won't be good because we won't have any creatures. So, kind of awkward there. Tempted by the Reek is really mana-intensive, despite being very powerful, again, because they hit tokens. But that's not going to be worth it in this type of deck because I have a bunch of other cards I want to splash, which I can't do if I have this in here, even if I am heavy blue. Burying Books is good, Serpent's okay. Blue looks okay at first, but it's just not going to work. So my first instinct is to look at like full 5 color, play all my good cards. That's almost always my first instinct in this format, is to look at your 5 color deck. Something I want to note about this format in general, while I thought about it, is you have to be very aware. You have to be very self-aware of everything at every time. It's not a sealed format that you can just look at your deck and say, or look at your pool and look at your rares and say, okay, this seems pretty easy. I'll play these colors. I'll glance at everything else, but who cares? You got to look at a lot of decks, and so I do. I'm going to show you guys like 6 builds. And then what I decided between in the end. And the reason for that is that there's just so many micro synergies. There's so many. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to explain, but there's so much potential in every archetype, and it's very, very difficult, nigh impossible, to tell what a deck's going to look like and how good it's going to be just from initial impressions and looking at the cards. You need to see the curve. You need to see the lessons alongside the deck. You need to see the learn cards. You need to see the mana base. Like, everything just kind of works together, and nothing is simple, and until you look at it, you can't really rule things out. Obviously, don't waste too much time, or your final build will be bad, because even if you find the right colors, you might make some incorrect cuts, but don't do what I did in Kaldheim, what my advice was in Kaldheim, and just look at aggro versus control, or just look at one or two colors and glimpse the cards. You gotta actually put the cards in your deck. Obviously, you don't have to look at actual everything, but in this deck, for example, initial impressions are 5 color with blue, 5 color without blue, just splashing these two, red and white aggro I'd like to look at, white black aggro I'd like to look at. I would like to at least look at red blue, because I have 2 Spectacle Mages and a Prismari Apprentice and Inspector Iteration, as well as some good blue and green cards, or blue and red cards. And I like the idea that my pop quizzes might be good in blue-red, because I have decent cards that are going to head on board, or decent lessons that are going to head on board, but not behind, which blue-red does decently, because it has a decent curve and some tempo cards. I also like the combo of Fractal Summoning plus Wormhole Serpent, so, you know, so on and so forth. Just look at all your stuff, consider the options you might want to build, and make sure you actually look at them rather than glimpsing them. Because at first glance, I was tempted to ignore red and white, aside from splashing, just because there weren't very many good cards, but as you'll see, the decks are actually better than they appear when you first look at them. Alright, so with that said, let's get into the 5 color build. Alright, this is impression 1, right? Yes. Build 1. Doesn't look great, does it? We need to play all of our good cards, every single one of them. But, as you immediately will see, the mana base is shit. Even without these two being splashed, the mana base would still be shit. And you have to splash these because they're just so powerful for such low downside. But yeah. They're very bad mana base, and these pop quizzes are not going to be good because we are going to be behind on board. We are not going to be casting our spells on time, and we're going to be behind on board at every point. Triple blue card is uncastable. I can pretty much say I'd have to cut this if I wanted to play blue, at which point, why am I playing these cards? They're not that good. Variant Books is the best one, and by not by much. And I'm just playing blue for no reason. So, we looked at it. If anything, I would cut blue and look more at black-green. But, however, now, we look at black-green. Wow, this deck looks quite nice, actually. Mana base is going to be a bit dubious, and we're going to have to add some worse cards, obviously, because we've got a bunch of good blue cards. But in essence, what we've done is perhaps lowered our average card quality a bit to increase our mana consistency by a lot. Because even though we're losing some more powerful cards for some maybe worse commons, we're just going to be more consistently able to cast our spells, which is great. And as you'll see, my final build does happen to be green-black. I just want to show you everything. So you'll see the final green-black deck at the end of this. But yeah, that's just, I looked at blue. I said I can't play blue. Now we're going to move on to aggro, and then we'll come back to black-green. But hopefully it makes sense what I said about having to lower the card quality, because we're going to have to play some awkward cards like Promising Dusk Mage, Honor Troll I'm not happy about, Fortifying Draught, Kawarok, so on and so forth, that I'm not crazy about. But yeah. Alright, then we look at the rough build of Bug. Oh, I already showed it to you. Oh, yeah, sorry. I forgot to... Yeah, I planned that ahead and I forgot. I actually did not look at Bug, but when I went over the pool again, I realized there's something I should have looked at. Instead of immediately cutting blue and saying, I'm not going to play blue, I should have looked at cutting red and white instead and see how that looked. And here's what it looks like. Again, still bad. Mana base is still garbage. I need green, but I also need it early. I need triple blue. I need double black every game. It's just not worth the cards. So what we end up doing is cutting blue for 2 good red and white cards. The mana might stay the same, but we're just increasing average card quality. So we already talked about this. Let's move on. Alright, let me look at red-white aggro. Pretty obviously not going to be red-white just because our black cards are so good, but I decided to look at it just because the curve might be very nice, and it does actually look quite nice. This deck makes very, very good use of Expanded Anatomy. It's got a decent curve. It's got a lot of surprisingly good cards. Like, it doesn't look like it would work, but it will. Beaming Defiance, while not Snakeskin Veil, is somewhat close in decks like this, with Twin Scroll Shaman that can kill them very quickly. With Guiding Voice plus Expanded Anatomy, you can creature very big and very hard to answer if they don't remove it immediately. It's got decent removal with Rip Apart, Pigment Storm, 2 Rise, Heated Debate. Got some bombs that can still win mid to late games. Got a decent curve with a 1-drop, a couple 2-drops. No, not great curve on further inspection actually, but the playable count is low, the creature count is low. All in all, I just couldn't afford to play this deck. So we look at black-white now. And this black-white deck actually looks quite nice. You have to splash the Phoenix because... Oh, I forgot to mention this, but splashing Phoenix is almost always worth it. If not just putting no lands in your deck for it, because you can discard it to learn and get it back with learn. And that exchange is, well, not great. Worth it if you don't run a land to splash it. I think it's probably not worth it with 0 red sources, but the first couple red sources don't cost that much, even without environmental sciences. Essentially what you do is you trade 2 learns for a 2/2 flyer, which it doesn't sound great, and most of the time I would not make that deal. Sometimes you really need tempo, or sometimes you really need a flyer to kill your opponent, or just an extra creature, and that's basically the only good way to turn your learns into tempo. Normally, almost always, not only do you have to get a spell instead of getting board presence, but that spell is usually mana inefficient relative to like a card that you would actually put in your deck. So having the option to turn your learns into card advantage is very good, and it's not exactly just 2 learns for a 2/2 flyer because it also can come back further. It's the future option to turn more learns into more 2/2 flyers once this dies, which is nice. But yeah, so we can play Professor Onyx now. It's great. We get to like Rise of Exodus more consistently. It's great. Curve looks better. Creature count looks slightly better. We still get all the good cards. We lose little from red. This is obviously better than red-white. However, is it worth it or not? I spoiled it already by telling you my final build, but it's close. I think it's closer than you realize. And looking at the pool originally, you might be like, how on earth do you not play a control deck with Professor Onyx? Oh, and I forgot to note this, but with Professor Onyx and Confront the Past. Basically saying that if you survive to cast Liliana, you can't lose the game because you can get it back a second time. And beating 2 Liliana seems very difficult. However, I think looking at this deck is good. I think it's very, very good to look at a deck like this, and I think it's closer than you might think to being better. Just because the mana seems very nice. The curve actually looks quite nice now with triple unwilling ingredient, with multiple guiding voices and multiple beating appliances. That just kills people, man. Turn 1 of our unwilling ingredient. Turn 2, who gives a shit. Turn 3, if you learn for this, or guiding voice, or you play guiding voice on turn 2. Expanded Anatomy. And if they don't kill your thing immediately, you got a 4/4 menace that they can't kill with Beam Defiance, right? And that's... If your deck's bad, if your pool's bad, your other decks don't look good, this could be a nice deck. Again, I keep repeating myself, but I think it's true. This deck doesn't look great. It just doesn't. But it's a lot better than a mediocre mid-range deck with a couple bombs like Professor Onyx or whatever, just because everyone else's deck is going to be super strong too, and having the option to cheese people is very nice. It's a similar concept to what I talked about as why Expanded Anatomy is good in a previous video, in that sometimes you just get to say, fuck it, if you have a removal spell, you win, and go all in. And that happens in Sealed too, in a grander sense of, my pool doesn't seem very good, fuck it, I'm playing aggro. But the concept of the Expanded Anatomy, in case you forgot or didn't watch the video, is sometimes you have a flyer, and your opponent has a bunch of small creatures, and you expand Anatomy, and you just go, okay, if I play a creature, you just keep attacking me, and I have to trade, and I take a bunch of chip damage. If I play Expanded Anatomy, your blockers are all stalled, and I get to attack with a flyer. In my case, it was with Vigilance, because I had Combat Professor, and I just get to hope and pray you don't have a removal spell. And sometimes it works, and having that option is very nice. Save is in Sealed. But yeah, not too much more depth to go in the deck. Decent curve. I absolutely don't love this card in general, nor do I love Knobs Protector, but having the option to sack this card is nice, as is Phoenix. And also, I just kind of wanted another creature for my guiding voices and such. I didn't end up finding a cut for this deck because I decided to look at black-green before deciding, and I haven't made a cut yet because I was too lazy. I could find a cut for you and probably optimize the deck, but now that I've already started recording, it's kind of too late for that. Let's want to sit here and watch me. So yeah, good deck. Definitely worth considering, but as you see when we look at the black-green deck, we will realize it's just much better. And here is the final build, the one I submitted. The one that I am relatively confident is 1 to 2 cards off of being the correct list. And the issue is, well, the issue with playing black-white is that this deck just looks too strong. It's got a curve, it's got playable mana base, it plays all of the same good cards, it gets the same amount or more removal, like I did Mage Duel. The mana doesn't decrease by that much. We get Professor Onyx to be a better card just because it's expensive, and we'll get to the mid to late game with lands more often than if we were playing an aggro deck. Again, we Confront the Past, we get Cultivate to fix us and ramp us to those, which is amazing. We get Dragon's Guard Elite, which is great. We get Emergency, which is great, fixing and ramp into our big stuff, and the deck just looks too clean. It just looks too clean comparatively. But I do want to emphasize, and I did want to show that black-white deck just so you guys understand what you should be doing in Sealed. But yeah, this is the deck. I think my one miss build was I should 100% have played Fortifying Draught. Not a great card, but in this deck, I would like Combat Trick, I think. A lot of the games played out, I was trading off awkwardly, and it just wasn't quite working how I wanted to, and 1+2/+2 would have been good, at the very least on defense, to make a good block. And I think I would have cut the Dust Mage, but I'm not certain on what the cut should have been. That Dust Mage would be something tempo negative. What I found is that I had too much late game. I just couldn't lose late games with Onyx plus Confront the Past, with double Rise of Exodus, with 3 very, very good high-value Learn plus Bomb cards, all 3 of these. And I just really didn't have a hard time winning late games, but sometimes I just got aggroed out, or had to make bad attacks because I wasn't drawing my bombs, and this would have helped, and these two just didn't. The synergy of Dust Mage plus Expanded Anatomy is always nice, but it just wasn't worth it in this deck because by the point this would have gotten traded off, like turn 6 to 7, the game was kind of already decided, and I already lost 3 drops, so the 2 drops, so the 2/3 for 3 didn't really matter, and Draught would have actually been quite good in this deck, with So you need Blood Ritual, Honor Troll, Spectre Defense, not completely relevant, but the idea that you can ping them and then make this 4 damage instead of 2 is relevant. Professor Onyx again, killing them randomly could be nice. Pledge Mage synergy, and like it just has enough synergy that I should have played it. Wouldn't have been great, but it would have been better than one of these two. I think that's about it. I could have considered playing some ingredients just to have more curve pieces, but I didn't think it was worth it. Just wanted consistency and good cards. Cram Session, I got access on Twitter. Why I didn't play this. The reason being, A, I have a billion learn cards already. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 learn cards already, and my lessons suck. So I was like, I didn't want to play that card. My lessons suck, and my learn cards are good. Alright, too many learn cards already. And I didn't really feel like life game was what I needed. I felt like I needed to stay ahead on board because many of my bombs are only good when ahead on board, i.e. Professor Onyx and Sparring Regimen. In fact, just being ahead on board is just very, very much better than normal, period, because of lessons all being tempo negative and the flexibility only being good when you're ahead on board. But especially in this deck with these type of cards, like I said. So that's why I didn't play it. I didn't play it. Except the video. I said I was going to talk about more sealed general lessons in sealed, but I already kind of did. Just throughout the course of this video, or throughout the course of talking about my sealed pool, I just kind of already did talk about some general lessons. I could try and remember what else I want to talk about, but maybe that'll just be it. I can also post gameplay if people want. I'm too lazy to record my voice over it, but if people want to see the games of both sealed and or the draft, I'm happy to oblige. Just let me know. If 10 people say they want to see it, I'll post it, but... General sealed lesson, or lessons. Yeah. That was funny. I meant to say lessons, and then I realized it's also a card type, and I already know it still applies. Just because it's a card type doesn't mean the word doesn't mean the same thing it does. General sealed lessons. Yeah, look at your bombs, play your bombs, look at lots of decks. Be open to unorthodox archetypes. Be very open to splashing. Oh, be very, very open to splashing. Yes. We already talked about it a little bit in why splashing is good in this deck. Just because it has good red white cards and the cost isn't that much. But point A, normally you get 1 Archway Commons or Letter of Opening, at least 1. Point B, Environmental Sciences. And what I want to specifically talk about is that you can double splash with Environmental Sciences. It sounds insane, it's not. What I intend to convince you of is that double splashing off Environmental Sciences is about equivalently constrictive on your mana base as single splashing a card with no Environmental Sciences. Okay? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense to everybody. Double splashing with an Environmental Sciences in your sideboard is about equivalently restrictive on your mana base as splashing a single card in a single color with no sciences. And that includes ability to cast your cards being equally as likely. Okay? Let's consider an example. Let's consider splashing. We'll ignore the review thing. Let's consider splashing and Sparring Regiment in this deck. Okay? So you've got 2 planes, we've got Archway Columns, we've got Cultivate. That's it. That's the only way to cast it, right? That's 4 sources. Okay? Now let's consider if this was a red-white card. Let's say I did actually. I'll say this because I did this before. What's the card's name? The Hofree Ghost Forge. Let's consider it as a Hofree Ghost Forge. Very, very broken red white card. Okay, and let's say we have an Environmental Sciences in our sideboard for 10. Okay, let's say we put 1 plains and 1 mountain in our deck. Okay, same amount of land slots have been taken up. Correct. Same amount of land slots have been taken up as if I was playing the white card. And the ability to cast it is basically the same. Because as soon as we draw either red or white source, we get to Environmental Sciences for the other one. Obviously, you need to draw a learn card and select the sciences, so it's not exactly correct, but in essence, it is. At least having the ability to cast it, if it might cost you a little bit of extra mana and flexibility, but you have the ability to cast it. So you draw one of these 2 sources, you play one of them, you assign this for the other one, and then you're done, you can cast your spell. And in addition, the same thing works for commons, right? Commons only provides one of the 2 sources, but sciences, Cultivate happens to provide both, but any fixing spell here you could replace, so on and so forth. Now, it does happen to be that this deck already could splash this. Could splash a single white card. But, you should make sure, you shouldn't just splash double black, or a double colored card off nothing. Off no reasoning, just because you have sciences. You should splash a single colored card off Environmental Sciences for no reason. Just because you put 1 plan in your deck, or you put 1 color land in your deck, and it provides like a very, very consistent way to cast it. But double splashing for a single card, however, less consistent. But it's worth considering, and you should make sure you're open to consideration, even though you wouldn't normally be. In fact, I had a standard or a draft deck that did the same thing, and I thought it was super sick. So let's share that deck too while we're at it. It was a draft, but I thought it was super cool. we splashed both Magma Opus and Rutha in our red or a black-white deck of a single environmental sciences. Is that not insane? It's insane, but if you think about the logic, it makes sense, right? As soon as we draw any of these 6, assuming we haven't used our sciences already, which I guess that's another awkward part. You have to use your sciences for a non-blue or red card, so to speak. But six sources to essentially be able to cast both of these, which is insane. It's just completely insane, and it was very worth it. We cast this to win many of our matches to get the 3-0 instead. Because the deck was kind of mediocre. I'm kind of mopey without it. And then Rutha also is a very great card, and was well worth the splash, even though it's on the double colored. Alright, well that is it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm sorry if there's a rain in the background at some point through the video. My microphone is being a shithead and I can't get it to work properly. Hopefully it was worth it for you. Subscribe, or else. I don't know what else, what the else is. I just didn't have a follow-up to that. And I might post some draft videos in the future where I go over the draft in real time and explain all my thoughts. But I need to get my microphone fixed before that, which I'm lazy, and also that takes time, so we will work on that as it comes about. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.